Hello, and welcome to Fog of War. I'm your host, Leon, and today we will take a journey to discover what Operation Mockingbird is and the relevance, if any, it has in today's society. First, what is a mockingbird? Well, they are best known for the habit of mimicking the songs of other birds and insects, often loudly and in rapid succession. Next, let's examine what is Operation Mockingbird. To sum it all up, it was an alleged large-scale program by the Central Intelligence Agency that attempted to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes. The CIA planted agents or willing participants within the news media establishment so they could echo or mimic the voices of what the CIA wanted to communicate to the masses, similar to what a mockingbird would do. Notice I said this is an alleged program. As we fully comprehend the power of communication and propaganda of news and media, you may have already begun to realize that we must be careful not to assume anything blindly. Now, you might be thinking, Operation Mockingbird is just a loony conspiracy theory and might exit the video shortly after 1 minute of watching. Or possibly thinking Operation Mockingbird is undoubtedly true because you are biased against the CIA and believe them to be untrustworthy. Or, like me, are curious about the existence of Operation Mockingbird and would like to rationally and logically examine any evidence that truly proves its existence. So I ask, where is the evidence? Has the CIA ever done this before? What is the motive? Where are the sources? Were they justified? Let us first establish a historical context. You see, before the CIA, there was the Coordinator of Information, the COI, and then the Office of Strategic Services. In 1942, Roosevelt constructed the COI into something more suitable for covert action, the OSS. It was formed in order to coordinate espionage activities behind enemy lines, the deliverance of propaganda, subversion, and post-war planning for the branches of the United States Armed Forces. Come with me and imagine going back in time in the 1940s, known for World War II and the beginning of the Cold War.
I think you were told something about your assignment before you went to E, weren't you, Al?
Yes, to obtain intelligence on aviation production and the position of vital targets in the capital district of enemy areas.
Correct. You're to set up an intelligence organization which will gather information for an SO operation. Are you set on your cover?
Not definitely. I've narrowed it down to two, either a government inspector or a chief mechanic.
Government inspector. Better for a native agent than a planted one. And these days, when enemy area is using every available man under 50 in the Army, people might wonder what special pull you had. Anything that makes people ask questions, even innocent ones, is bad cover.
Then you think the mechanic's the better bet?
If you're a good mechanic. You know nothing will blow you quicker than not knowing your job.
Well, I put in 7 years with General Motors, and with a little brushing up, I think I'd be all right.
Mechanic in an airplane plant near the capital. It might be the ticket. We know they need good mechanics so badly now that it might not take you too long to establish good permanent cover.
Now, if I could get a job on the night shift, I'd have plenty of time to devote to my hobby during the day.
Good. I like the way you're thinking. Now go to work. So you're all set on your story, eh?
Well, I'd like to try it out on you.
All right. Shoot. Let's see how closely it conforms to your own life. And don't forget, I'll be watching for errors as closely as an enemy police officer.
Here it is. My name is Albert Horn. Both my parents were born in enemy area, and I lived in Detroit for 5 years when I was born there in 1903. I was in Detroit until 1913, when my mother died. And I was sent back to live with my aunt and uncle in the capital of enemy area. I graduated from the gymnasium in 1920 and went to work in my uncle's bicycle shop. In 1924, I went back to Detroit and worked as an apprentice in the Ford plant.
Just as important as your official papers, and more subtle to select, are your casual effects, the odds and ends you happen to have with you that may be more convincing to the enemy area police than your identification and travel permit. The stickers on your suitcase, a handful of cigarettes, a train stub, an old address book, a letter addressed to you as a private in the Army from a girl in the town you're going to, and a snapshot of her with you in an enemy area uniform. Details, each one a thread woven into the pattern of your cover story. How many cases of blown cover you studied were due to neglect of some insignificant detail of cover that didn't seem worth checking a second time?
Mr. Durant?
Yes?
Someone told me you were looking for an assistant.
An assistant? I could use an assistant. How much experience have you had?
I was a mechanic in the Army, 2 years in the tank corps.
Good. I've been looking for a man with your kind of training.
Then I'm your man.
Got your work clothes with you?
Right here in my bag.
Good. Come on inside and I'll start you right to work.
Thank you, sir.
A big hotel. How about that? Lots of people. Easy to lose myself in there. Full of loose talk. Might get a chance to pick up a little info.
But remember what we told you, Al. That's why informers like them, too. That's why the desk clerks, the maids, the waiters, and the bellboys are all on the payroll of the secret police. And how about conformity to cover? What's a mechanic doing at the best hotel? Like any other respectable member of enemy area society, Al gets a war production job.
Report to the East Gate on the night shift.
Thank you, sir.
Moves in with a private family. Makes friends with his fellow workers. Attends the government labor rallies. Listens faithfully to all official broadcasts. Receives praise from the foreman as a conscientious workman. Takes a stroll through the park on his way to his job on the night shift. Like any other respectable member of enemy area society. A couple of enemy area citizens having a harmless conversation on a park bench. At least that's the way it looks to passersby. But this casual conversation covers the first meeting between our agent and the cutout, who will carry his first message to the WT man to be radioed from enemy area.
Notice our friend Al had a cover story and a cover occupation, masking his real one so that he could collect and report intel unknowingly from the enemy to the OSS. So we now know it is not a radical idea to think that the CIA is still practicing this form of espionage in the international global arena. Let's remember this idea so we can examine proof of it later. At the end of World War II, in 1945, the OSS is abolished. While other American agencies are hunting down Nazi war criminals for arrest, the U.S. intelligence community is smuggling them into America unpunished for their use against who? The Soviets. This is known as Operation Paperclip. More than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians, such as Werner von Braun and his V-2 rocket team, were recruited in post-Nazi Germany and taken to the U.S. for government employment. The primary purpose for Operation Paperclip was U.S. military advantage over Soviet Russia during the American Cold War and the space race. The Soviet Union were also aggressive in recruiting some 2,000 German scientists of their own, with their Operation Osoweichen. According to contemporary history, 80% of all the combat of World War II took place on the Eastern Front. During the 4 years of the Soviet-German struggle, the Germans suffered 10 million casualties, 75% of their total wartime losses. In comparison, the contribution of Stalin's Western allies to the defeat of Germany was of secondary importance. With the success of the Manhattan Project, the first two uses of the atom bomb in World War II destroyed Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and were more of a warning to Soviet Russia to back off more than anything. The fire bombings of Japan were more catastrophic to its people than the actual two uses of the atom bomb. According to an article published in foreignpolicy.com, when the Russians invaded Manchuria, they sliced through what had once been an elite army, and many Russian units only stopped when they ran out of gas. The Soviet 16th Army launched an invasion of the southern half of Sakhalin Island, which at the time was controlled by Japan. Their orders were to mop up Japanese resistance there, and then within 10 to 14 days be prepared to invade Hokkaido, the northernmost of Japan's home islands. The Japanese force tasked with defending Hokkaido, the 5th Area Army, was under strength at 2 divisions and 2 brigades, and was in fortified positions on the east side of the island. The Soviet plan of attack called for an invasion of Hokkaido from the west. It didn't take a military genius to see that while it might be possible to fight a decisive battle against one great power invading from one direction, it would not be possible to fight off two great powers attacking from two different directions. At a single stroke, all of Japan's options evaporated. The Soviet invasion was strategically decisive, and in September 2nd, 1945, Japan surrenders. In 1947, the Central Intelligence Agency was born. It was established to prove as a great source of America's information during the Cold War with the Soviet Union. The Central Intelligence Agency was given $46 million by President Eisenhower in 1955 to have the CIA headquarters built in Langley, Virginia. Now, this concludes the first part of our discovery of Operation Mockingbird. We have established a historical context of espionage being used by the United States to collect information on her enemies. We've also established the Soviet threat from World War II and to the end of it and the beginning of the Cold War. On the next episode, we will discuss further the CIA's involvement in the Cold War and the importance of propaganda coming from both sides, and how this war was a war of communication, subversion, intelligence. In contrast to World War II, it's much different. If you are enjoying this channel and you would like to support it, I have left a Bitcoin address at the bottom. And if you want to hear more from this channel, please click on the subscribe button and select the little bell so that you can get notifications every time I make a new episode. I appreciate all of your support. I look forward to hearing about your feedback, your input. But until then, thank you for listening.